everyone. Hopefully you had a nice Passover break. Exactly a week ago, we all read a very interesting part of the Haggadah. I'm going to read it to you and translate. And I'm sure everybody read this last week. And I want to hear what you have to say if you have any questions on this paragraph. Right in the beginning of the Haggadah begins with the following words. You pick up the matzah and you say, Halach ma'anya. This is the bread of affliction, the achalu avatana, that our fathers ate, bara de Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt. Kol dichvin yeteveichol. Whoever is hungry, come and eat. Kol ditzrich yeteveichsach. Whoever is in need, come make pesach at our house. Hashta hacha. This year, now we're here. We're in America. We're in Europe. We're all over the world. L'shana haba ba'arad Yisrael. Next year we'll be in the land of Israel and Eretz Yisrael. Hashte avde. This year we're slaves. L'shana haba b'nei chorin. Next year we'll be free. This is how we begin the Passover Seder year after year. And just a few years ago I was reading this. I had some time as the Rabbi Vosoghi. I had to come up with some material. I was looking over this and I was bothered by a question. Anyone bothered by any question on this first paragraph? Again, this is the bread of affliction that our fathers ate in Egypt. Whoever needs, come and eat. Whoever needs a Suda, please join us. This year, we're here outside of Israel. We're in exile. Next year, we'll be in Eretz Yisrael. This year, we're slaves. Next year, we will be Bnei Chorin, we'll be free. Anyone have any questions bothering them about this paragraph? Yes?
We're inviting them once we're already at home. Inviting them at the end of the show.
Okay, that's a good point. That is a valid point that is discussed. And back in the days, they did have poor people all over, and they did leave their doors open, and the poor people would walk around. See, we live in a generation of riches, of a lot of wealth. We live with a tremendous amount of wealth. You can't imagine. You look at history books and what they lived through about 100 years ago. We're very wealthy. There's not so many poor people, although you do find, in New York, I didn't see so many. Pico Boulevard, you do have your share of, people that sleep on the streets. I think most of them are not all there, if not all of them. But your average person could get a minimum wage job and have a half-decent life. But that's a different point. That is a good point, valid point. That's not the question I was looking for.
Isn't it bread of freedom?
The bread of freedom.
Yeah, because that they were free.
Okay, that is also a good point. Is it a bread of freedom or is it a bread of slavery, bread of affliction? That's a good point. That's also discussed. Any other questions from the guy's side?
Why is it next year?
Why next year?
Easy.
I mean, you should really say better. What do we say this year?
Why we say this year?
Good. Everyone hear the question here? We're saying that this year we're all slaves. Next year we'll be free. If you ask my opinion, living in America in the 21st century, you have freedom for anything and everything under the sun. You have the freedom of religion, thank God. We live in a Malchut Shel Chesed, in a country that is very kind to us. We have freedom of speech. You could say whatever you want, whatever you please. As long as you don't hurt anybody physically, you could dress how you want, you could say what you want, you could preach what you want. Any religion, anything goes. You want to be a different gender? No problem. Change your gender. You want to marry your man, marry man? No problem. Everything goes. And it became like and now it's almost a mitzvah for all these people, the activists, everyone should have rights. You want to marry the same gender? What's the problem? No problems. Everything goes. We have a tremendous amount of freedom. What exactly does the Haggadah mean that we are slaves? This Haggadah was written for us to read until the end of time. What exactly did they mean that we are slaves And I think in order to answer this question, we have to define what freedom means. You know, if you think about it, if you're giving it a second thought, what does freedom mean? What does it mean for a person to be free? And what does it mean for a person to be a slave? This is what I want to discuss tonight, and I think it's a very powerful idea, a powerful lesson that we could take. So let's see what the Torah says is a definition of freedom. If you look at Parshat Kitisa, one of the Parshiot which discusses one of the greatest events in our history, after Moshe Rabbeinu goes upstairs and he receives the tablets, the 10 Commandments, the Torah writes that he gets it from God. Vayifen vayired Moshe minahar. He turns and he comes down from the mountain. Ushne luchot ha'edut biyado. And the 2 tablets of testimony are in his hands. Luchot ketuvim mishnei Avraham. Now these tablets were written on both sides. Something of a miraculous nature. If you write, let's say, samach, and you carve out a samach, the middle of it should fall down. Miraculously, these letters were just hanging in the air. And it was written on both sides. Mizem zehem ketuvim. This was an act of God, says the Torah, Maaseh Elokim, V'amichtav michtav Elohim, and the script was the script of God, Charut al luchot, engraved upon these tablets. These are the words of the Torah describing the tablets that Moshe Rabbeinu got. Charut al luchot, engraved on the tablets. The Pirkei Avot, we all know that during these 6 weeks from Passover till the Chag of Shavuot, the minhag is to try to read the Pirkei Avot, to prepare ourselves for the oncoming holiday of the receiving of the Torah. The Pirkei Avot has a question on this. It says, what does it mean, Charut al luchot, it was engraved on the tablets? If you know Hebrew grammar, it shouldn't have said Charut al haluchot, engraved upon the tablets. It should have said Charut beluchot, in the tablets. You engrave something in the stone. Because of this question, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law, teaches us that the Torah is alluding to some very important lesson and important message that the Torah wants to teach us. Now listen to this. Pirkei Avot says, quotes this verse, this pasuk, it says, Al tikra charut ela cherut. Don't read the Torah as charut ela cherut. What does cherut mean? Freedom. Shein lecha ben chorin ela mi she'oseh betalmud Torah. The only person who is truly free is someone who's involved in Torah learning. Someone who constantly goes to Torah classes, they pick up their books every day, and they're reading Torah. They're involved in Torah learning. That is the definition of someone who is truly free. Now, when I read this, I was bothered by the obvious question. This seems to be very backwards. If I ask you, in this religion, how many halachas we have, how many halachot, you would say, Rabbi, we have thousands upon thousands of halachah. We are told how to act, and every single aspect of our lives is dictated by halacha. You open up the first volume of the Shulchan Aruch, it tells you how you get up in the morning. Get up like a lion, don't be lazy, but don't jump too quickly out of bed because you might hurt yourself. You can't walk more than a certain amount of steps before you wash your hands. We're told how to go to the bathroom. Certain fingers are holiness, you put tefillin on it. You can't use those fingers. How to take a shower. Your head goes first. The head of a person is the Rosh HaIvarim, which means the head of the limbs. You're supposed to wash your head first, and then this, and then that. How to go to the bathroom, how to shower. We're told how to talk. What comes out of your mouth. We're told how to eat when you're sitting at the table. There's a whole section in Shulchan Aruch that tells you what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. How you're supposed to eat, how you're not supposed to eat. Don't indulge too much. Don't put too much food in your mouth at one time. Don't take down your entire cup of soda in one shot. Everything has guidelines from beginning to end. There's not one area in a Jew's life that we're not told what to do. If you ask my opinion, that is not freedom. If anything, people who are involved in learning Torah were slaves. We're the ones who are in prison. What exactly does Pirkei Avot mean that the only person who is free is someone who learns Torah and is someone who's keeping the Torah. I dare argue that someone who's keeping the Torah is a complete slave. We have no freedom. A lot of times a person wants to sleep in, but you have responsibilities. A Jewish man has to get up, he has to put on this tefillah at a certain time. Once the time passes, you lose out on a mitzvah forever. Laws after laws after laws, from beginning to end. There's not one area in life that you're not told what to do. I dare argue that it's not freedom. We're completely shackled in prison, and all religious Jews are chained down. We're all prisoners. We're all slaves. Everyone here hear the question? Ever think about that? So, I think we have to redefine what freedom means and redefine what being a slave means. And I'll give you an example. Back when I first went to yeshiva, right after high school, I took a year off. I was accepted to UCLA out of high school, and I wasn't planning on going to yeshiva. And we weren't so religious when I was younger. I was planning to go to UCLA, got accepted, and my friends were going to Israel. They were trying to convince me, come with us, it'd be good, and you become independent, you have the time. And there's a rabbi that Divine Providence had that first year, in my last year in high school. It was his first year. He just moved to Valley Torah High School, and I got very close with him. And combination of my friends and the rabbi pushing me a little bit, I ended up deciding to go to Eretz Yisrael. Now, it wasn't an easy fight at all. My father, of course, telling me, what are you going to do? You wasted UCLA, you got accepted, I had pretty good grades. What are you, crazy?
You can't defer 1 year?
So that's what happens. My father said, I'll only let you go if you defer for a year. So with the guidance counselor in the school, I wrote up a whole letter asking them to take off a year. And thank God, my life is a different life because that letter was accepted. And I'm not going to go through the whole story. A year became 2 years, and 2 years became 3 years, and somehow ended up for many years in yeshiva. And lots of arguments back and forth with my father. What are you doing? You're going to waste your life. Baruch Hashem, thank God, now he looks back. He's very, very happy that he sent me to yeshiva. And he feels very fortunate. Anytime he has any issues, any questions in life, he's calling me, and he's talking to me, and he sees my lifestyle. Baruch Hashem, he's very happy with the decision. He was just nervous, the whole time, all the years. What are you going to do? You're not going to be able to make money. In LA, you need a lot of money to survive. Are you going to survive? I told him one time, we had this discussion, I said, Dad, would you rather me be wealthy and unhappy, or just be making it and be happy? What's he going to say to that? He can't tell me that. Okay, be miserable. He is the type of father that he lets us have freedom a little bit. Talking about freedom, he's not the type to push. He'll push, but not that much, And hence the rest is history. So that first year in Israel, my grandparents live in Netanya. So when I first went, the grandparents calling me. They're all excited. They came to Israel. They came to the airport. Every third Shabbat in yeshiva, I was in Chavetz Chaim, Yerushalayim, I would make a trip out to go. My grandparents calling me, come to our house, please. You have to understand, grandparents, their grandchild coming to Israel, their highlight of their week is the grandchild coming to their house for Shabbat. Now, every third Shabbat, they found out that I had an off Shabbat. So during the week preceding the off Shabbat, I was getting phone calls, countless phone calls. You're coming to our house, right? You're coming to our house, right? So what am I going to do? What am I going to say? I can't let them down. So I went every third week, a whole schlepping from Yerushalayim to Netanya, go to Tachana Markazi, pick up the bus, pay whatever it was, 40 shekel, hour and a half bus ride to go to Netanya. At one point, it was the terrorist bombing this, that my mother was freaking out, so my uncle drove all the way from Netanya to come pick me up and take me there. This is the extent that my grandparents wanted me to come. I remember the first Shabbat I was there. They live in a small apartment, no air conditioning, not like here, central air. It's humid as anything. It's right by the beach in Netanya. Very humid in the summer. I was sitting there on Shabbat afternoon, and sweat just pouring down my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, get me out of here. But Baruch Hashem, it was a tremendous zichut to respect my grandparents. It made them very, very happy. So the reason why I'm telling you all this is the shul that they went to, right off the block, something very interesting occurs in the Israeli shul, something you don't see here in LA so often, or anywhere in America, generally. But there's a certain phenomenon in some of the Israeli shuls, the smart Israeli shuls in Israel. Something occurs that people in the middle of davenings randomly start screaming from one side of the shul to the other side of the shul. Now, if anyone's been to some of these shuls, you know what I'm talking about. There's one guy I was thinking of, that this guy, he had a temper that you can't imagine. Any little thing happened in the shul that didn't fit in with what he thought should be the proper way, the rabbi was there, but he had the chutzpah to get up and start screaming across this, the shul, one side to the other, middle davening. So I remember there was one, after several months, one Shabbat I was there, the guy comes over to me, and he says hi. I'm like, oh man, I was petrified. I knew something was going to go downhill, something was going to go wrong. I knew I was going to get embarrassed. So I'm like, okay, here we go. The guy says, oh, what's your name? In Hebrew, I said, oh, Yaakov. So he says, Ben kama ata? He says, how old are you? I said, I'm 18. So he said, are you married? He said, no, not yet. He started screaming, 18 years old, you got to get married, ben shmona esrei l'chuppah, and he gave me a whole speech and musar about the fact that I'm not married. This guy had a huge temper problem. Now I ask you a question. Would you say that this guy is free? I dare argue that this guy is not free at all. He's a complete slave. He's a complete slave to his emotions. He's a complete slave to his temper. I had a few minutes to look up some of the statistics yesterday, and the studies show that over 20% of Americans have a major anger management issue, and they can't control their tempers. You come to New York, the amount of road rage you see, it's unreal. It's less here, but it happens here also. People have no control over themselves. You don't know how many lives I've seen that the families are dysfunctional because there's a father in the family who cannot control his anger. I had a high school boy I was very close with, and we got very close to sports and playing ball together, and he was having a difficult time in life. And once, since I was close to him, he talked to me here and there. One time he started venting about the different things going on in his life with his father, relationship. I knew there was something wrong with the relationship. And it turned out that his father was very, very angry type of person, and very tremendous temper. One time even he said that unfortunately one of his sisters is completely off the path of Torah and religion, and in some college in the Midwest, not a good situation. And I said, what happened? My father was very tough. Any time in life, you should know this, hopefully when you get married and have children, if a parent is constantly driving the kids crazy, putting a lot of pressure on them, forcing them to do things, you get turned off. The number one reason of children going off the derech and going off the path of religion is not society, is not all the pleasures that lure a person out there, is not what does it. People tell you that it's a big mistake. Generally, time and time again, I've yet to find a case where a kid is having a problem with keeping the religion. Every time you trace it back, you'll see that there's something wrong with the parent-child relationship. Either the father with the son, or the mother involved, she's very angry to force the kids. Worst thing you can do in the world is to force your kids comes to mitzvot. Right now, my oldest son is 10. I talk to my yeshiva, I talk to big rabbis, and sometimes he doesn't want to come to shul. Don't come. I have like a certain policy in my house. It's a little bit of like freedom, but it's not do as you please. You have our bedtimes. There's a schedule. There's a routine, but you have to give them freedom. If you force people to keep their religion, they'll resent it. From an early age, naturally, every human being does not want to be told what to do. You force me, put pressure on me, natural reaction is to rebel, is not to want to do it. You force religion is the worst thing you could do. The kid will hate doing whatever he's forced to do. You force him to sit by the Shabbat table, they'll hate Shabbat. Guaranteed recipe, your child will hate Shabbat. You force him to daven, force him to pray. 8, 9 years old, the fathers bring the kids to shul, make him sit down, you have to pray. Say this, say that, and expect the unreasonable. The kid will hate davening for the rest of his life. When he's younger, he has no choice. He's under the control of the parents, he has to follow. Come to a certain age, when they become more independent, the teenage years, the rebellious years, if you don't have a solid relationship, they'll rebel. And they'll cast the yoke of any yoke that is upon them, and that's how it always works. You think about it yourself. If someone, your parent, your mother, asks you to take out the garbage, if she says, take out the garbage now, and she screams at you, you're reluctant to do it. You don't want to listen. I'm a rabbi. If my wife would tell me, that I left a bag of garbage by the door, take it out. You talking to me like that? What do you think this is? Again, I'm telling you, I'm a rabbi, but that's the natural feeling. So my wife is smarter than that. She knows not to say like that. Honey, would you mind, please? Can I trouble you to take out the garbage? It's a different world. Naturally, no one wants to be told what to do. No one wants to be forced to do anything. You force anything, you force religion, it completely undermines any liking to the religion. Now, someone who has a temper in the house is a tremendous problem, especially if the temper is channeled towards religion. And unfortunately, this guy's father, the religious father that he would be very tough on the kids and forcing them, all for the sake of L'Shem Shamayim, for the proper sake of heaven, to perform the mitzvah. And unfortunately, the daughter went off because of the father being so tough. One Shabbat, what did it is that one Shabbat he said that he walked into one of the rooms, and sure enough, she was on the computer on Shabbat. Father, fuming, mad, he goes over, he takes the computer, the laptop, he opens the window from the second story, smashes it down. You know, I don't know how he did it because the computer's muktzah. So if he's so religious, and I guess muktzah is allowed, you know, for certain cases if you need the place. I don't know, but unfortunately, this is what it does. Would you say this guy is free? I would say this guy is a complete slave. He's a slave to his Yetzer Hara, he's a slave to his emotions, complete slave. You talk about Chazal teach us, the rabbis say that there are 3 traits that take a person out of this world. Pirkei Avot writes, and remember this, 3 traits that take you out of the world. Shlosha davarim motzi'in et ha'adam min ha'olam. They remove a person from this world. Says the Pirkei Avot, kavod, the desire for honor. The desire not to be less than anyone else. Everyone else is making a fancy $150,000 wedding. How can I be any lower than them? I'm also a man of prestige. And I'll kill myself to be able to make that fancy wedding. So what people are going to think about me, what people are going to say about me. I know a guy who, he was living in New York, he wasn't living in Great Neck, if anyone knows Great Neck. Great Neck is like the Persian hangout, that's where all the Persians are. And a lot of nice houses in Great Neck, that's where it's at. Very expensive real estate, similar to LA. This guy was killing himself. He didn't have enough money, killing himself, working many, many hours a day, just to be able to somehow put aside some money to be able to move to Great Neck. Why? Because you got to live in Great Neck. It's belittling to live outside of Great Neck. He's completely killing himself, not spending any time with his family. Why? Because I have to live there. People killing themselves, what type of car they drive. So I have to have a prestigious car. I have to be a somebody. The desire for kavod, and what great lengths people will go to get there. The clothes you wear. And we're tremendously affected. What society preaches, what Madison Avenue preaches is what's in style. What's in style one day is not in style the next day. Everything is controlled by a bunch of, money-hungry people that don't have the highest standards. What's in one day, the ties that used to be in, now let's go back to the 70s and 80s, the thin ties. Everything changes, and we're affected by this. You talk about the first one, the desire for honor. Taiva. The second one is the desire for lust, for the desires of the passions of this world, the physical pleasures. The Chazal writes that ein adam met v'chatzi ta'avata b'yado. There's no person that's going to die that even has half of his desires in his hand. What do you mean, Rabbi? This guy died. He was living it up his whole life. From the age of 30, he had $200 million in the bank account. You're telling me he died and he didn't fulfill half of his desires, half of his passion? Say the Chazal that is true. Interestingly enough, I was looking up some articles yesterday online, and one of the articles written by non-Jews. He writes that a typical, again, this not talking about LA, a typical city in anywhere in America, the average salary, a person makes $75,000 a year, or $75,000 to $100,000. You can make a decent living. In LA, that will get you nowhere. But $75,000 to $100,000, you can live a decent life, live a happy life. Anything more than that is way above luxury. And interestingly, it said time and time again that people that have a lot of money, they have $100 million, for some reason they can't stop working. For some reason they want more. And you know, it wasn't clear exactly on the explanation, but we know the explanation. Chazal write that if a person, misheyesh lo maneh, a guy who has $100, rotze time, he's going to want 200. You have $100 million, you want $200 million. You have $500 million, you want $1 billion. Now everyone sitting in this room will say, Rabbi, I promise you if I have $200 million, I'll be very happy, including the speaker. I'll be very happy, I'm not going to want more. For somehow, in some reason, every single person in the world that you'll find, there's a never-ending drive to want more.
Is that bad? Like, you're not...
If you get sucked into it, and your whole goal in life and mission in life is to amass more and more wealth, then it's bad. It depends at what's the expense. At what expense are you making that money? See, I've discussed this before. A lot of any father you ask will tell you that the money is the means to a goal. The goal is raising the children, raising the kids, putting them through school, education, raising a nice family. The money is the means to a goal. You need a car, you need a house, you need food, you need clothing. For somehow, along the way, when a person gets involved and they start making the money, the means to a goal becomes the goal unto itself. People lose sight of what really matters. And you have fathers that are working many hours a day. Dr. Abraham J. Twersky, I'm a big fan of his. Rabbi Dr. Abraham J. Twersky, he wrote many books. In one of his books, he writes that there's a Chinese expression, I forget exactly how it goes, that there's a curse. The curse is that all your wishes should come true. And Dr. Twersky writes, he never understood how that's a curse. It's an amazing thing, all your wishes come true. He says, until he had a patient that came to his office, and this guy, he was in his 30s. His father had so much money you can't imagine. He told Dr. Twersky, I think my father's nuts. My father has enough money that even if you lived 1,000 years, he'd be living in complete luxury. He's a multi-millionaire. And this guy himself also was very successful. He used a lot of his father's money to invest in properties and in everything. He had a house in Miami, he had a house in Manhattan, he had it in LA. Yet he was completely down and depressed. To the point that he was thinking he was suicidal. This is what Dr. Twersky writes. And you think, how's that possible? A guy has everything under the sun. How's it possible? Dr. Twersky asked them, you know, do you ever, maybe you should think about, do you ever give any tzedakah, give any money away to charity organizations? So the guy's like, why should I give my hard-earned money to other people? So he said, with such a self-centered attitude, of course, you're going to end up being miserable in life. We all know that the natural drive God placed in every human being to want to amass more. This drive, our rabbis teach us, is a drive implanted in every Jew and every human being to reach spiritual heights. To not be content with the level that they reach. It's not enough that I perform this and this mitzvah and I'm holding here. To do more. Again, you have to do it do it normally and stay sane and be happy in life. You can't push too much. But that drive is to be channeled towards ruchniut, or spiritual growth. Unfortunately, people channel it all towards physicality, towards amassing wealth, and it takes over their life. Here's this guy who was talking to Dr. Twersky, he says that his father was working from early in the morning, 7 in the morning, to like 8, 9 at night. Which bug bit this guy? He's out of his mind? What is up with him? He can't stop. Sarah Chazal, you'll never be happy with the amount of money. You always want more. Never-ending drive, and again, this is all implanted in us for spiritual growth, and it's unfortunately mischanneled. A lot of fathers do not spend the proper amount of time with their children, and then they wonder why their kids, when they're 13, 14, I don't know how many of them talk to me after I give parenting classes. Come over, what do I do? My son doesn't want to listen to me. Do you have any relationship with him? Where were you when he was 7, when he was 8, when he was 9? Yeah, I had to work, I had to make the parnasa. 8 in the morning, they come back 9 at night, the kids are already asleep. It's already so late that they're not in the mood. Nothing to do with the kids. Comes Shabbat, it's a day of rest. Day of rest means you sleep for the entire day. And again, you have nothing to do, completely crooked view of what it means a day of rest. That's not what God means by a day of rest. Right? No time with the families. How much taiva, this is what it means. The desire for lust, desire passions, take a person out of this world. I'll just share with you, there are a lot of different addictions. My wife is even telling me about a coworker she had in New York. This lady didn't have so much money. The lady was having a hard time making it. Yet every day she would see her on the internet during her lunch break, buying something. She's completely addicted. They even have a term, I looked it up. It's called shopaholism. That's what it's called, shopaholism. You can become addicted, complete slave to what? To shopping. You talk about, I'm not going to get too much into this, a yearly revenue for inappropriate material. Inappropriate videos and material. My friend who's doing outreach in Arizona in a college campus, he did research on this. He said the yearly revenue for inappropriate material is over $100 billion. That's more than Microsoft, Google, Apple, Amazon, eBay, Yahoo, and Netflix combined. You're looking at a world where there are a lot of sick people out there. How many? Over $3,000 spent on this garbage every second. And you're telling me that people are free? That people are in control? People are complete slaves. A person who can't put aside their phone, they're completely glued to their phones. I did some research on the phones. You want to hear a few facts? I don't know if you want to hear this. A few facts about the phones, about smartphones. 40% of the population is addicted to their smartphones. 40%. According to an article in Psychology Today, there's an article in Psychology Today magazine, 40% of American population suffer from this addiction, and 58% of men and 47% of women suffer from nomophobia. You know what nomophobia is? It's the fear of being without a smartphone. 2013 Mobile Consumer Habits, another magazine. Estimated 12% of the users use their phones while they're in the shower. I don't know how. I guess I just got a smartphone. If you guys, I think the answer is certain ones are waterproof. I know the Galaxy, I have a Galaxy S5. I have the S6. S5 was waterproof. They tell me the S7 is waterproof. So maybe if waterproof, you take it to the shower, you hang it up there. You listen to music, checking up your emails in the shower. Why not use the time in the shower? You're spaced out. Might as well use your time. All of a sudden, people become such studious people. Study conducted show that 91% of the new generation take their phones to the bathroom to use it. We won't ask anybody here if they take their phone to the bathroom to use. Okay. Most people will constantly check their phones without any reason whatsoever. If you're one of the people that has their phone in their hand or constantly are checking, a guy just checked the time, and 10 seconds later, literally, they press the button again. See what the time is. What's the matter? It becomes a habit. What? It becomes such a habit, it's almost, you have to be careful with addictions with this stuff. It becomes a habit. Like, you just press it. So I think I did it while I was with my wife one time, at the table, and I pressed it, I wasn't paying attention. 10 seconds later, press it again. I was saying, why are you pressing your phone? I want to see what time it is. You just pressed it 10 seconds ago. I didn't register that I looked at it, but I didn't focus on what time it was. Most people will simply keep their cell phones in their hands and keep turning the screen on to make sure they have not missed out on any notifications, call, or messages. It's such an emergency, so important. It's life-threatening. Maybe someone's going to call you or text or some message. The chas v'shalom, if you miss it, life's over. You have to make sure you look at every message. 80% of 18 to 24-year-olds sleep with their cell phones right next to them. I don't understand that, but 80% apparently. I don't know, whoever here, you don't have to raise your hand, but if you're sleeping with your phone, that means you got to think through a little bit. People who have their phones right next to them while they're sleeping, the first and last thing they do after they wake up and before they go to sleep is to check their phones. The first and last thing. Talking about in this religion, Kiem Chayenu, the Torah is supposed to be our life. The first thing in the morning is supposed to be Mode'ani, Lafanecha. The last thing you do at night before you go to sleep is Hamapil, the Shema Yisrael before you go to sleep. Cell phones have taken over, our lives in that sense. Study indicated that parents who spend more time with their phones have a greater tendency to shout at their children. This is very true. I've seen people that are much more impatient with their kids when they have their phone. Why? It's very simple. Because you're in the middle of texting, you're in the middle of writing an email, and your kid asks you a question. I notice by myself sometimes. And people ask me, there are a lot of advantages to texting. People from New York, Baruch Hashem, are constantly sending me texts. A lot of people I was very close with, they constantly send me texts because, first of all, it's convenient, and second of all, they feel close to me. They don't have anyone to ask over there. They send me texts. And I have to answer them. And I noticed a few times here and there when I'm in the middle of thinking of the answer, sometimes you have to write a longer text. I generally don't like answering halacha questions on a text because it could be misunderstood. I try to go back. Friday afternoon, or it's easy answer, I text back. My kid asks me a question, and then he loses it's hard for me to focus. Ladies are better at, in multitasking. Men are horrible at it. So I lose focus, and then you lose your patience, and you get feisty with your kid. What did he do wrong? He wants your attention. But no, I have to answer the question. L'shem Shemayim. I have to answer halacha questions. And a lot of important things on the line. But you start shouting at your kids. You have to be so careful. Average person checks their phone 110 times a day, while the more addicted check their phones 900 times a day. Try to keep a count. Tomorrow, try to do a test and keep a count of how many times you're checking your phone. 95%, listen up, 95% of people have stated that they text, browse the web, or watch TV in the hour before finally falling asleep. 95% of this country. Can you imagine? This is what they're doing before they go to sleep. 1 or 2 people say they wake up in the middle of the night, 1 or 2 people. Without any reason, they'll check their phones. I don't understand for the life of me. What do you think you're going to miss at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning? That's so important. You need to check your phone. 63%, I'm sure people here are like shaking their heads and thinking in their mind, oh my gosh, I'm that guy. 63% of people use their gadgets before bedtime have stated that they don't get the proper amount of sleep during the week. Okay, you're gutsy enough to admit, but it takes it. People can't function normally. Then you don't get enough sleep. You're more moody. You don't deal with your kids properly. You can't function well. You don't understand the Torah lecture because your brain's out to who knows where. And I'm talking about not even looking at inappropriate stuff or looking at. I'm talking about just using time on the internet. Cell phone addiction ruins relationships. It's very clearly, husband and wife. The wife wants to be able to communicate with the husband after a long day. I don't know about this anymore. Maybe the wife's also on the phone. They're both on their phones and they're both happy. But generally, women like to talk to their husbands and ask how the day was and have like a normal relationship. If someone's constantly on their phone, it ruins that. How many accidents? Many accidents occur due to cell phones and people texting during on the phone. Smartphone addiction can result in mental issues such as OCD and depression. This has been proven. A person who is constantly pressing the buttons and develop an addiction, this would definitely add to the OCD and the depression. For every 100 hours you spend talking on the phone, I don't want to even say this, you increase the risk of brain cancer, by about 5%. Treatment is now being offered for cell phone addiction ended there. You talk about, is that having a phone, having a smartphone, and doing as you please, is that freedom? Or is a person who has no control, would you say that's considered being a slave? I dare argue that this is considered being a slave. You know, the third one, so far we have the desire for honor, taiva, which is passions and lust, feeding into the physical pleasures of this world, and everything this world has to offer, money. And the third one is jealousy, kina. You know, you talk about jealousy, it's a very powerful trait. There's Chazal teaches that, let's say, picture this. You live in a small community, and there's 50 neighbors in that community. 50. There's a very wealthy guy in the community. He decides that he's had good neighbors. He's going to buy every single one of them a car. He buys every single person in that community a nice, fancy Mercedes. New Mercedes. And he hands them all present. His funds were low. The 50th neighbor, he didn't have enough money for Mercedes. He gets him a fully loaded Lexus. Also leather seats, also the whole deal. Nice sound system, sunroof, whole deal. How do you think that neighbor will feel? Will he enjoy his Lexus, or every time he's in this fancy, nice, good Lexus, he's going to be eating himself up and going crazy over the fact that every single other person has a Mercedes? This is very telling, and it's very true. A person who has a jealous eye will never be happy in life. You constantly look at what other people have, you kill yourself to be able to reach and amass the wealth they have, the house they have, the car they have. Unfortunately, it's among everyone, but the Persian communities have this a lot. In Farsi, they say chesham cheshmi, which means chesham cheshmi, which means, you know, what you see with your eye, you want. What they have, you want, and you'll never be happy. How many cases of husbands I heard just recently? You know, I was talking to someone. And the guy, he was very wealthy. In the crash 7 years ago, he lost all his money. And his wife is used to a certain lifestyle of driving a fancy car. And if she doesn't have that, she wants a divorce. That's what the relationship is built on. That's called a marriage. That's what your husband's good for. If he doesn't give me my needs, everyone else has it. Everyone else in Beverly Hills is driving this fancy car and has this fancy house and has this nice watch and what was the purse, the expensive one? They told me, great neck. Which one is it? Oh, that's what it was. A couple $1,000 or something? And, you have to have certain standards. Huh?
There's a lot of options.
There's a lot of options. Baruch Hashem, these days, there's a lot of options. You know, but all these people, would you say that they're free? I would dare argue that complete slaves. People are slaves. You're looking at a world, the majority of them are slaves. Slaves to their passions, slaves to their desires, slaves to their temper, their anger. True freedom is someone, as the Pirkei writes, Ezehu, Gibor, who's truly powerful. We talk about the Torah's definition of power. Is not a president, is not a bodybuilder, is not a multimillionaire. Says the Pirkei Avot, HaKovesh et Yitzro, the one who's in control of his Yetzer Hara, the one who's in control of what his mouth says, the words that come out of your mouth, what your eyes see. If you're able to control your eyes, what your ears hear, the person who's in control of their anger, that's someone who's truly free. So you'll say, fine, Rabbi, so everyone out there, most people are slaves in one form or another. But we're also slaves. I didn't answer the question. Religious people are also slaves. We have laws about every single part of our lives. No? I still didn't answer that question. We are still slaves. They're slaves to a different type of slaves. They're slaves to their passions and desires and money and everything else. We're also slaves. We're slaves to God. We're slaves to halacha. Everything is mandated and dictated by halacha. So to answer this, I think you need a mashal. Can you picture, you go for Shabbat to someone's house, you get set up somewhere, you're at a Shabbat brachot or something, you stay for someone's house for Shabbat. You go and you see inside this house, the kids have complete freedom. Complete freedom. They stay up as late as they want. The parents want to stay Friday night at 10 o'clock. The kids are up 12 to 1 in the morning. They're a 10-year-old. And they eat whatever they want. They don't have to come to the table. They're eating candy the whole day. Would you say those kids are free? I would dare argue that no, they're not free. They are free to do as they want. But is that the best thing for them? Of course not. Those parents are fools. In a similar sense, God gives us commandments. God says, do this, don't do this. Go here, don't go there. We think we're adults. We think we know better. But we're really children. Compared to God, we're little kids. The kid doesn't know what he's doing. We think that it's the best thing for me to make all this money, to get up late, to do this, to do that. We think it's the best thing for us. God says this is not good for you. He says, my child, you need to follow these rules. I know that going to sleep at a certain time, this is the best thing for you. To function normally tomorrow, you need to go to sleep at this time. I know the best thing for you is to have a day of Shabbat. I know it's very difficult, and you might think that you're being a slave. You might think that you're being imprisoned and shackled down. This is the best thing for your family. Because God says, I know that in the 21st century there's going to be a lot of technology, a lot of things pulling families away. It'll be one day a week where you sit down together as a family, you enjoy each other's company. There's something more beautiful than the day of Shabbat. If Shabbat is kept properly, there is nothing more powerful, more beautiful than Shabbat. Nothing but just spending time with the family. No phones, no computers, no iPads, nothing. Everything is off. The non-religious Jews, they should look at this and they should be running to become Jewish. Non-religious people should be running to become religious. Day of Shabbat, so powerful. God says, follow this. This is the best thing for you. You might not understand it, but it's the best thing. In conclusion, says the Gemara, Barati Yetzehara, Barati Lo Torah Tavlin. I'll conclude that. It says that God says, I created the evil inclination. I created the Torah as the antidote. The only antidote you have for the Yetzehara, the evil inclination, to not be controlled by your emotions and passions, is by learning Torah. And Rabbi Yisrael Salanter Zatzal says that that's referring to learning Musar. To learning Musar every day. It's so important to learn Musar. You ask me, what did I do in yeshiva all these years? It's one thing, self-perfection. My Rosh Yeshiva, Zatzal, I didn't understand for many years until I became a rabbi. He stressed, in the entire day in yeshiva, from the morning, we mainly do Gemara. There's a half-hour slot of Musar, which you do from 3 o'clock to 3:30. That, he was more makpid. He cared more about that than any other Seder in the day. If a guy, slept late sometimes and missed Seder, he didn't come to the lectures, didn't come to the class, you say, okay, fine, I'll give this guy smicha. If he goes through it, they look at his records, they find, they know that the guy missed here and there, even if he missed 20%, 30% of Gemara, they would give the guy smicha if he passes the test. There's one group of people he did not give smicha to. If consistently a person missed that Musar Seder at 3 o'clock to 3:30, he would not give a smicha. I'm not giving my stamp of approval that this guy is a rabbi if he did not come to learn Musar every day. I don't understand why he's making such a big deal about it. And then I get older, I see. Everything is about learning Musar. If you're not learning Musar and you're not working on yourself, you're losing the point of life, the mission of life. You're being controlled by your Yetzirah. You're a slave. You're a slave of what you see, you're a slave how you act, you're a slave of what you talk, you have no control. No control what comes out of your mouth, no control what you hear. That's being a slave. Says the Gemara, you want to be truly free, it's only by learning Torah and learning Musar. You're constantly going to these lectures and being involved. That's the Torah's definition of freedom. And how do we answer that? Going back to the Haggadah, this year we're slaves, next year we'll be free. What does it mean we're slaves? It means we're slaves to our passions and desires and drives. That's what it means. Next year we'll be free. When Mashiach comes, you should know, the Gemara says, fortunate is the person who sees the days of Mashiach, and unfortunate is the person who's there at times of Mashiach. Why unfortunate? It's going to be a big war. It's going to be a lot of people passing away, unfortunately. The war of Gog and Magog. It's a very rough time. However, says the Gemara, fortunate because you'll see God's hand. The Yetzirah will be removed on that day, and you have a clear recognition. On that day, God will be one, and everyone will recognize. You'll see Him. You will see His presence. There's no doing wrong anymore. A person's ability to grow and to strive and to pass these challenges is only now. Once Mashiach comes, then it's already too late. There's no real challenges anymore because you'll see God right there, and the Yetzirah is gone. Yetzirah is gone. So the Haggadah means that now we're slaves, next year we'll be free. Next year we'll be free because the Yetzirah is gone, and you'll be in control. And what is it God? Yes?
Will we still have free will after that?
You will have free will. It's a big discussion in the Rishonim exactly what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. Maybe we'll leave that for a different lecture. But you will have free will. But again, the free will is limited because once you know there's a God, right now a person justifies doing anything wrong. You don't see Him, you don't know, you have a lot of questions, and how come a lot of rich, bad people are prospering? And it puts questions in your mind. Why did the Holocaust happen? But there will be a day when you'll see God right there. And if you see God right there, who's going to do something wrong when you know God's right there? You know what I mean? God should help us that we should all become truly free and, remove ourselves from the shackles of the Yetzer Hara and the passions and the drives that control most people.